Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really powerful book called To the Patriots by Shrii Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar. It's a book that takes a concept we all think we know, what a nation is, and pretty much turns it completely on its head.
So, right off the bat, the book asks this huge, fundamental question. We talk about nations like they're these solid, permanent things, but this book challenges us to look way deeper at the invisible forces that are actually holding people together.
So, what are the usual answers we jump to? We might say, oh, it's a shared language, or maybe a common religion, or, just geographical borders. But the book's big argument is that nope, none of these are the essential ingredients. It points to places like Switzerland, one nation, four official languages, or Belgium, where French speakers see themselves as Belgians, not French. So clearly, these common markers, they just don't tell the whole story.
And right here, this is it. This is the core thesis of the entire book. The secret ingredient, the real glue that holds a nation together, isn't something you can draw on a map or find at a census. It's a shared feeling, a collective mindset. It's sentiment.
Okay, so what exactly is this sentiment? Well, the book defines it as a collective mental structure. You can kind of think of it as a shared headspace, a powerful feeling that gets a whole group of people on the same page, either because they're all for something, or, as we're going to see, very often because they're all against something.
Now, to prove this pretty radical idea, the author takes us on this absolutely fascinating tour through the history of the Indian subcontinent. But it's history seen through this unique lens of shifting sentiments. It's like reimagining history as a story of collective feelings.
And here, you can see that idea in action, playing out over thousands of years. The main sentiments in India were constantly changing, and every time they shifted, a new idea of what the nation was, well, it was born. And this wasn't because borders moved, but because the feelings of the people did.
So let's go way back. The book argues that in ancient times, you basically had two nations living on the exact same land. The first was built on the feeling of victory from the invading Aryans, and that, in turn, sparked this powerful counter-feeling among the indigenous non-Aryans, who then formed their own nation defined by their opposition. And guess what? We see this exact same pattern repeat itself centuries later. A powerful Buddhist sentiment sweeps across the land, creating a Buddhist nation. But as a reaction, an anti-Buddhist or Brahmanical sentiment grows right alongside it, forming a second, competing nation. It's pretty amazing.
Now, this is where it gets super interesting, because you can see how this action-reaction thing plays out in everyday life. When a Muslim nation formed, a Hindu nation actually strengthened its own identity by consciously doing the opposite. The book notes that if Muslims prayed facing west, Hindus were forbidden to. It was a way of drawing a line in the sand, of strengthening that us versus them sentiment.
Then, everything changed. With the arrival of the British, a brand new, all-encompassing sentiment just exploded onto the scene. For the very first time, as the author says right here, one single feeling, an anti-exploitation, anti-British feeling, united the entire massively diverse subcontinent into one single Indian nation. Okay, so all of this history brings us to the author's analysis of the modern era. Because if a nation is really built on a sentiment, what happens when that sentiment just vanishes? This is where the book presents its most profound and maybe its most urgent challenge.
And here's the crucial point. In 1947, India gains independence. The common enemy is gone, and with them, that unifying anti-British sentiment just evaporates. The author makes this really stark argument that in that moment, the Indian nation as it existed effectively died, leaving behind this dangerous psychological vacuum.
So what rushes in to fill that vacuum? Well, according to the book, in this fragile new period, the leadership made three critical errors, three great lapses that instead of building a new unity, actually risked splintering the country even more. And here they are. First, creating states based on language, which the book argues just encouraged people to think of themselves as from their region first and Indians second. Then, sparking this huge, divisive debate over a single national language. And third, shifting higher education into local languages, which actually made it harder for people from different provinces to connect. From this perspective, each of these steps just weakened the very ties that needed to be stronger. But the book doesn't just leave us there with the problem. It actually ends with this incredibly enthusiastic, really progressive vision for what comes next. So, if the old sentiment is gone and all these divisive forces are at play, what's the path forward?
The solution it proposes is to create a new, positive, and powerful sentiment. And this feeling shouldn't be based on what divides people, like language or religion, but on a common, universal goal, launching a fight against exploitation in all its forms.
And just think about that. This is a sentiment designed to cut right across all those old divisions. It would unite the farmer, the laborer, the poor, everyone against a common problem. Not a foreign ruler this time, but the very real enemy of exploitation itself. But the author goes even further. He argues that, look, even an anti-exploitation sentiment has a shelf life, because hopefully one day exploitation will end. For a truly lasting, permanent unity, he proposes a higher ideal, a spiritual sentiment that recognizes that all beings everywhere are part of one single cosmic family. And this leaves us with this truly provocative, kind of mind-blowing final thought. The book suggests that this whole historical journey of nations, with all their rising and falling, is ultimately a journey towards one single united humanity, a universal nation bound not by what they're against, but by a shared spiritual inheritance. What would a world built on that sentiment even look like?